I'd like to call the Narragansett Town Council meeting on March 19th to order. Please stand to salute the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First order is approving the minutes, and there are no minutes tonight, so I do want to make an announcement. There is a motion on the agenda tonight, motion 13, to talk about Narragansett and South Kingston and more accessibility for South Kingston. It was sponsored by myself and Mr. Moretti. We received many communications. People did not like the idea. And as most of you know, as I've sat up here for over 10 years, that I listened to the people, and it seemed like it was not a very popular idea, although we were trying to do something positive. So I'm going to pull that item, Mr. Moretti. Okay, so I just want the public to know the item is pulled. Moving on in the agenda, I have a couple of announcements. One is that I'd like you to join us at the community center on Wednesday, May 30th, from 5 to 8. We did some renovations at the community center that we want the public to see. And at that night, we will also recognize all our boards and commissions, the work that they've done during their school the entire year. So we're going to have them come, and we're going to have a celebration. We're going to thank all the boards and commissions, and it's at the community center. And we hope that you'll come out. It's out on the website. And the other activity that we're having is a town-wide cleanup day. It's a partnership with the town of Narragansett, the Land Conservation Commission, the University of Rhode Island, and Narragansett 2100 on Saturday, April 23rd from 1 to 3. Steve Dignault is going to plant a tree at the end of that celebration in spirit of taking care of Narragansett. So all are welcome. We've included the Narragansett school population, and they'll receive community service if they attend the cleanup. So we hope to get a good turnout on that day, and the rain date will be Sunday, which would be the 22nd. Moving on in the agenda, we have a showcase tonight, and we have Pat.
Susan, before that, on item number 13, I just want assurances that we're not going to have another version of that coming forward.
Yeah, we pulled the motion, so the motion is off.
Right, but I want assurances that we're not going to have another version of that come forward. I mean, we voted on it.
Yeah, so I'll comment. I'll comment. I mean, so assurances, I'm not going to assure. First of all, it's very unpopular. We talked about it, and my assurance to the town and to you personally, if you want an assurance, is we're moving on for the rest of the season. Good.
Thank you. Okay, moving on.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Pat. Yep, thank you.
I'm here to present the audited financial statements. So I'm just going to give you some highlights. We met earlier and went over the audit report in detail. Just some of the highlights from the audit report. Pages 1 to 3 is our independent auditor's report. And it's an unmodified opinion, which means there are no qualifications, and the statements are presented in conformance to generally accepted accounting principles. And then we also have an independent auditor's report on internal control and compliance. We had no instances of material weaknesses and no instances of noncompliance. The general fund ended the year with, let's see here, on page 16, a total fund balance of $18.9 million. 3.5 of that is related to the school unrestricted fund, and 10.3 million of that is unassigned fund balance. The overall fund balance in the general fund increased about $678,000, I'm sorry. And the budgetary statement showed an operating surplus for the general fund of $2 million for 6/30/17. Of that, 1.75 million was positive results in revenues and 250,000 positive results on expenditures. The school unrestricted fund had an operating surplus of $1.7 million for 2017. And the town did implement some new accounting standards this year, GASB 74 and 75, which relate to the OPEB trust and OPEB accounting. So those are my highlights. I don't know if anyone has any questions.
No, we just met with you. No, you can keep going.
I'm all set. That was just the highlights. If this was something else we discussed earlier you'd like me to go over, I'd be happy to.
Okay.
Those were just the highlights.
Yeah, just summarizing what the difference between the budget and the actuals was from last year.
Yeah, sure. Like I said, the overall surplus in the general fund budgetary basis was $2 million. 1.75 million of that was positive in your revenues, meaning, you know, you budgeted so much, you had positive variances in various revenues, property taxes and miscellaneous revenues. And your expenditures, you came in under budget approximately 260,000, which generated the $2 million operating surplus. Now, in 2018, that money has been shown as assigned. You budget for that in your 2018 budget, approximately 1.8 million of that to balance the budget in 2018. So, any other questions?
I think we're good, Pat. Thank you
All right,
very
thank
much.
you.
We appreciate your time tonight. Moving along in the agenda, public hearing. Oh, I have to wait. Okay, let's move on to the consent agenda. Any items from the council that would like to be pulled? Oh, thank you, Richard, keeping me straight. Open forum. Come on up.
We just heard about
Richard, state your name and
yeah,
address.
Richard Van Gemersh, 55 Osceola. We just heard about a $2 million surplus, which I really haven't looked at yet. But I'd like to remind you of a possible use for that. And maybe a month or two ago, there was a passionate plea by the NIHOD OPEB actuarial expert. Now, when you say passionate for an actuary, this, of course, is really something big, because actuaries are regarded as even being more cold-fish in nature and passionless than accountants. So, but he really was quite passionate and talking about a long-term funding plan for the OPEB trust fund. In an attempt to build this up, he gave and that was reported in his report as well, will greatly decrease problems and flexibility in the future. The best hope for this happening is the constant attention of current employee unions to make sure this happens. OPEB, though it is a kind of a mysterious subject, it is also possible that the general taxpayer will be more interested in property taxes due to the, radical change in itemization for state and local property taxes on the return. Capping that itemization at $10,000 is going to get quite a few more people interested in property taxes. If your tax bill is $50,000 and you deduct it and you're in a 40% marginal bracket, you don't really feel as bad. But if you can't deduct any more than $10,000, the taxpayer is going to say, hey, I got to fund this. The federal government's not throwing something in. So I would suggest that we take the passionate plea, the first passionate plea ever done by any actuary, that we take it to heart and start building up the OPEB trust fund balance.
Thank you, Stanley. Oh, Richard. I see them both so often. I thought they were related. Karen, come on up. That's pretty funny.
Karen Chapshelowitz, 63 Wanda Street.
Karen, can you pull the mic down?
Karen Chabshellowitz, 63 Wanda Street, Narragansett. One of my earliest childhood memories was made when I was 2 years old. My mother was hospitalized in a big Boston hospital for treatment of complications of childbirth after a sibling was born. Children under 12 were not allowed to visit the patients, even if they were not contagious or the children were not contagious. My grandfather told me that this was a bad rule, and that when rules are bad, we had to try and change them. My grandfather was an extremely bright man who went right from high school to Boston University Law School because he loved the law and was anxious to try and change what was wrong. This was my legacy from my beloved grandfather, and one that I try to live my life by and pass that legacy on to my children and grandchildren. The political pendulum swings back and forth in Narragansett, and it is concerning to me that it is sometimes very fuzzy in its understanding of the affirmative obligation of the town to put the rights of the residents first in Narragansett. Sadly, this is not always done. The residents who vote in town deserve that and nothing less. I'm referring to the ability to triage the needs in the town. And being on the library board, I have found it extremely frustrating that the library has constantly been put on the back burner with all this petty arguing and, we don't want this and we don't want that. I have a little trouble understanding why this wasn't all figured out before it went on the bond issue, and while it continues to be a continual problem. There is a counselor that keeps saying, I don't understand why we can't have it where it is now. And we've explained till we're blue in the face why it cannot be at the present site because of parking, structural problems, lack of space. And I find it very frustrating to keep spending time going in circles on this and attending the political football game that
Karen,
seems
you
to
have
be
to wrap it up.
happening. All right, the other thing is the senior center. We keep giving schools a lot of money despite the dropping population, and despite the increased population of seniors, we need more programming for the seniors. We
Thank you,
need better
Karen.
chairs, and we need a program director so we can have more programming.
Thank you.
And I think that's essential for the seniors.
Thank you.
Leo Sullivan from 21 Wanda Street, Narragansett. I would like to speak to item 13. First of all,
So it's pulled on the agenda, so you can't speak to it.
well, okay, then I would like to say I really appreciate the early actions that the board took this evening, rearranging the agenda. But I do have a concern. My concern is that after months of meetings,
Okay, sir, I pulled it from the agenda.
They can talk on anything you want at public comment, Susan.
Thank you.
well, I guess I would talk to more process. My concern is that when the town follows the process and they have meetings and they have committees and they have reviews and this board actually gets to see and hear all that information, assuming they go to the meetings, how we can get to a point where after the board agrees to our beach policy or any policy, that before the policy even has a chance to be started or enacted, that we go back and revisit it again. It's unbelievable that the council can't take a position and hold to it. Everybody has an opportunity to speak, whether it be at the board or at the various meetings. All those concerns, all those possible solutions should come forward. Why do we have to go back and revisit things over and over again? And it's not just this particular beach policy. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak? Stanley?
I just wanted to bring
Stanley
Stan
State-
Wojciechowski in Narragansett.
Thank you.
I just wanted to read the increase in benefits I'm going to receive. Your Social Security benefits will increase by 2% in 2018 because of a rise in the cost of living. You can use this letter as proof of your benefit if you need to apply for food, rent, or energy assistance. So it seems that the federal government has determined that 2% is about the right, I don't know what they call it, inflation, or it's the right increase that maybe we should see. And then I read in the paper about proposed 4% increase in taxes, and I thought that was probably not in tune, you know. I'd like to give you this 2% piece of paper so you can see that it's valid. Yeah, yeah. 2% is by far much better than a 4% if we can. Thank you.
Thank you, Stanley. Anybody else wishing to speak? Moving on to the consent agenda. Any members of the council like any items to be pulled?
No.
No? I would like to pull item 4. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda absent 4?
So move.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
5-0, motion passes. Number 4, motion to approve the request from the Narragansett Lions Club for the use of the Gazebo Park for their annual Easter egg hunt to be held Saturday, March 24th, 2018, from 9:30 a.m. to 10:05 a.m.
So move.
Discussion. I just wanted to make sure that the community knows that the Easter egg hunt is Saturday, March 24th, held by the Narragansett Lions in the center of town. All families are welcome. A motion to, do I have a first and a second to approve 4?
Yes. Yep. I moved it. Yep.
Second, all those in favor of the
Aye.
motion?
Aye.
5-0, motion passes. New business. Motion 9, a motion to receive a report from the town manager regarding the town-owned property at 140-170 Clark Road. Do I have a motion?
So move.
Second.
Discussion. This was put on by Jill. Or Jim? Jim.
Thank you, Madam President. On February 5th, 2018, the Town Council voted 4-1 to direct me as the town manager to research the possibility of the sale of the Clark Road property that the town currently owns. In 2002, the town of Narragansett purchased 11.79 acres on Clark Road for $1.5 million. In 2004, the town of Narragansett sold 3.75 acres to the Narragansett Housing Authority to develop 40 affordable housing units for the price of $460,000. This left approximately 8.04 acres, which is currently zoned as P Public. And the Parks and Recreation Department moved there in 2007. That's just a brief historical perspective on the property. When I was directed to research the possibility of the sale, the feasibility of selling this property, I strategized in the least costly way to do it. And I came up with that the first hurdle would have to be a title search, the second would be an appraisal, the third would be a survey, and the fourth the property would have to be rezoned to R10 to make it work for to raise the appraisal value. The staff did a very brief title search to see if there was anything that we could see right off the bat without having the assistant solicitor look at it to see if it would preclude us from selling this property. There was nothing in the title search that the staff did that we could see. Assistant Solicitor Steve Marcella, who's a title expert, we drafted him to start the research process at a very minimal cost of approximately $200 to the town. And right away we saw that, he did that on March 8th, by the way. Assistant Solicitor Marcella then revealed that the title search showed that there was a $300,000 grant from the Rhode Island Department of Environmental Management for the, in 2004, we got this grant, the town received this grant for some recreational purposes. Right away, this raised an alarm that we received this type of grant. Would this put a barrier on the possibility of the resaleability of this property? In speaking with Mr. Marcella, Attorney Marcella, he said it possibly could. I had directed the staff to contact their contacts at DEM, and we spoke to Mr. Paul Jordan, the acting deputy chief of the Division of Planning and Development, and he stated, quote, "In this instance, I think you would eliminate the town from any consideration for future recreation grants. That at least would be my recommendation to the director. And paying back the grant would not be a door we would want to open." That was when we asked him if, even with this, knowing about this grant, would we be able to sell this property? So the answer is yes, you could still do it, but it would raise some serious concerns about future recreation grants for the town of Narragansett that we've applied for in the past.
Sorry, Jim, did they say if we were to sell it, that we would never be able to have another recreational grant? They wouldn't?
That would be the recommendation of this assistant director to the director of DEM. So reading between the lines, I would venture to guess the town of Narragansett would not receive any future recreation grants.
Thank you.
So in light of the possibility of losing future recreation grants, which are important to the town, I'm respectfully requesting you as the town council to advise me if you'd like me to move forward to the next step, which would be an appraisal.
Would be what?
An appraisal of the property.
I don't think it would be in the best interest of the town to move forward. Obviously, we would need to make sure we could have any type of recreational grant at all. So thank you for looking into it. That's why we look into these things.
So it's not requiring a vote at this point?
No, I think he's just looking for direction, whether he should continue or not, and I say no.
I say no. You can say how you feel if you want. I mean, since we're not voting, I think it's important for the public to know how you feel about it.
I think based on the feedback we get a lot of feedback from the neighbors in the area on Clark Road, in addition to the $300,000 grant for recreational purposes, I'm not going to be pursuing this. I would not be interested in pursuing this anymore.
Agreed. I also concur with my esteemed colleagues, and I want to thank Jill Lawler for thinking outside the box, even though several residents took a couple hits on her. We're elected here to serve the public. Same thing with the beach pass earlier tonight, I mean, if we can't look at different things, and I know we're in the hot seat and we're supposed to take criticism, and I have no problem with that, but some of it has been pretty bad rhetoric from some of our constituents. And I just want to thank Jill for her insight of looking forward. You also, Susan, for your, perspective on beach passes and that. So I just want to point that out.
Mike, did you want to say anything about your feeling on Clark Road?
No, I think it's great that we looked at it, and I think based on the feedback I got and based on what you discovered, I think it doesn't make sense at this time. So.
Right.
Okay, thank you. I'll just put this in the file and
there you
close
go.
it for now. Thank you.
Okay, moving on. Motion 10, a motion to receive and accept a donation of K9 Astra, 17-month-old German Shepherd from the International Brotherhood of Police Officers, Local 303.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? I think that this is excellent. I'm sure the chief wants to highlight a couple of things for us.
Yeah. Stanley, can we get a puppy? Is it okay we get a puppy? I know the dog food runs up a... Can't say no to a puppy.
Okay, so the details on the purchase. It was about $10,000 for the new K9 and the training program together, and another $1,800 for the kennel. All this was picked up by the police union. When our last K9 Goro retired, there was an interest in the department to continue on with the K9 program. It wasn't budgeted for, so they offered to pick up the tab on this, and that's what we're having to vote for tonight. Any questions?
Nope.
No, nice. Thank you.
Madam President, may I add something on that? So I spoke to the trainer of this canine. It's one of the best dogs he's ever trained in the town of Narragansett. It's very fortunate to get it. I think the chief's being very humble with this. The town did not strong-arm the union to do this. They came to us and said, we would like to do this. And that actually is a very positive thing that the police union stepped forward to volunteer to spend $12,000 of their dues to get a canine, which will definitely benefit the town of Narragansett.
I should also point out that our last dog, Goro, was also paid for by the union, so there's a precedent for it.
Excellent. Thank you.
Good.
The motion's on the floor. Any discussion from the public? Stanley.
Come on, Stanley, it's a puppy, for God's sake.
I just want to, Stan Wojciechowski again, I want to commend that action, you know, and I'm looking forward to hear and see some more action by many others in the same venture. Again, not to completely count on tax dollars for every affair that we tackle, but others to come forward like that, and I commend them for doing that. I want to thank them very much.
Thank you, Stanley. Anybody else wishing to speak? All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
5-0, motion passes. 11, a motion to adopt an ordinance, an amendment of Section 5.7 of the zoning ordinance of the town of Narragansett Historic Districts. This is a second reading. Do I have a motion?
So move.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
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 No.
4-1, motion passes. 12, a motion to introduce, read, and pass and accept as a first reading an ordinance in Article 4, Farm Animal, Sections 6-79 roosters. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second? I'll second that for discussion. This came up, and it's a restriction of roosters in the residential zones. Came up because there was this wonderful young mother that had 2 young children that was living, abutting a house with 22 hens and 2 roosters. Unbeknownst to me, you don't need the roosters to have the eggs. And so it has become pretty problematic, and if you know Old Pine or Metatuxet in that area, it's pretty dense and pretty tight. And so she had come before this council pretty distressed about her inability to sleep, her hours of waking up with her young children because of the noise with the roosters. There were 2 roosters on the property. I met with Tony Santilli. We live in a residential zone, so for me, I believed in the first ordinance. I think you shouldn't have roosters. I don't think you should have chickens running around or hens or anything else. But this tonight is to restrict roosters in the residential zones in Narragansett. If you do the research, they bring rats, coyotes, they're filthy, and so you want to have them on your property, that's fine, but it is a quality of life issue. And, you know, the question was asked, you know, how many people have complained? If I were that one person, and I live next to those 2 roosters, and they crowed from morning till night, I want to wring my neck too. So it's one person in this community, and I got to tell you, she's been out of her mind. And if you want to live on a farm, maybe you should take the 22 roosters and the 2 roosters and the 22 hens down the road. But I'm not sure it's going to pass, but I strongly advocate for it because I think it is a quality of life issue. So that's what I have to say. I know some of my colleagues like roosters and don't want to prohibit them, but I don't want them living next to me. I like the Rhode Island Red, beautiful, but not in my back door.
Well, I guess I'm the bovine pro-rooster animal guy here. So basically, there shouldn't be 2 roosters. If you want to amend it to have 1 rooster per coop, I guess is the proper term, I would support that. But
Okay.
you can't ban all roosters. I mean, roosters have been around the hen house for 2,000 years here. So I think if there was 1 rooster at that location, you wouldn't get the noise.
Okay, thank you for that
So-
modification. So that lets me know where where I can work this motion. What do you think about roosters being restricted? I mean, we restrict horses and pigs, and I don't know.
I don't know, like a bovine on a sidewalk. I saw that in a...
I mean, I focus on 2 things. I focus on a noise I focus on being disturbed if your neighbor has a rooster that does what it does and it wakes you up at all hours. So I focus on that. I also focus on the fact that we live in a, mostly residential, our neighborhoods are they're all residential. So, I mean, there's certain portions of the town that certainly if you have, lots of acreage, then I'm not against it. I'm in support of banning annoying subjects near your property that keep you up all, including, if your neighbors are violating noise ordinances from 11 to 7, so. I'm not focused on the rooster. I mean, I'm focused on the noise, so, I mean, it's.
Yeah, but the ordinance is to.
I know, I understand, I understand.
To limit to one rooster?
Any opinion on this side?
I guess I have to, a little bit of what Mike just said. I think that the town would be better served looking at ordinances that look at the entire town. And the noise Mike mentioned is, as far as the rowdiness of the students during the academic year is certainly something to look at. I did a lot of thinking on this since we last talked about chickens and roosters. And Pat brings a good point about regulatory issues and keeping laws at a low. But Matt had a nice point as well. When the people were here in the audience, they hadn't even spoken, right? So there were two neighbors they hadn't spoke to see if they could solve it. So I asked the question, how many people have complained, and the answer from Jim was very few. I think that maybe this is a situation where we can have people work things out rather than putting another law on the book. And if they can't work it out, that's what the town manager is here for, to help resolve some issues.
From the public, Karen? Oh, Karen, sorry, it's 8 o'clock. You can come back up after the public hearing. It shouldn't be long. A motion to open the public hearing?
Oh, so did you read it?
A public hearing for text revision?
Move to open, yeah, so you got to say it, and then I'll move to open it. Right.
A public hearing for text revision for section 11.3, public hearing and notice, text revision of text 22.1, public hearing requirements, chapter 731 of the Code of Ordinances of the Town of Narragansett, Rhode Island, entitled zoning.
Move to open the public hearing.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Public hearing, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Public hearing is open. Go ahead, Mike.
Thank you, Madam President. I was afraid I was going to be following an animal act, but I guess instead I'm cutting in the middle of it.
Yeah, stick around.
I'll try to keep this brief, but what I'm presenting to you tonight is a suggestion for some very modest changes in two sections of the text of the town zoning ordinance. These two sections are somewhat related in that they regulate the way property owners are notified of pending public hearings on zoning matters. Late last year, you'll recall, we had numerous historic public hearings on the expansions of the historic district. We had 6 districts proposed. You eventually approved 2, and thankfully those were great. Those were great approvals. But the background process is kind of difficult, and one of the more difficult parts of this is that it can be costly to notify property owners. In both zoning change and zoning variance applications, property owners within 200 feet need to be notified. So through our research during that period of time, we discovered that there's something other than just standard certified mailing that can be done, and it's called certificate of mailing. So I've got a brief presentation for you. It's 3 slides, and it'll help us to kind of understand it.
Mike, can I just ask, is this the practice around the state? Are they not doing the certified, they're just doing the regular mailings?
It's varied, to be quite honest with you. Several communities stick with certified mailing for zone changes, and others have gone with this proposal because this was passed, the allowance to use certificate of mailing was passed in the 2015 General Assembly session. So prior to that, everybody was doing certified mailing. Right. With regard to zoning variances, all you need to do under state law is first-class mail. We have been doing certified mailing because that was what was placed in our zoning ordinance 25, 30 years ago. So we've been exceeding the state requirement on zoning variances. The proposal here tonight is to change both of those to certified mailing, certificate of mailing, I'm sorry.
Certificate of mailing, right.
So first of all, certified mail is the required notification for two types of public hearings. It goes to property owners within 200 feet of property being considered for variances and special use permits, which is regulated under section 11.3 of the zoning ordinance. And the zoning board carries those things out. As I'm sure you all know, you've all attended zoning board meetings now and again. The second goes to property owners within 200 feet of properties suggested for change of zone. And the historic district mapping was, in fact, a change of zone. It was an overlay map added to the regulations. It didn't change the residential zoning of properties or the commercial. It added the overlay designation for historic review. But that is regulated under section 22.1, and it is under the authority of the town council to issue zone changes. In both cases, the certified mailing requires signature by the recipient at home. And if that person is not there, they are left with a little card, a little 3x5 card in their mailbox that tells them that they have mail, certified mail waiting for them at the post office. Oftentimes people see that card, either they don't understand it or they don't care to go chase it down. They don't receive the mail, they don't go to the post office, and then something happens in their neighborhood, a zone change or a variance, and they wonder why they weren't notified. It also costs $3.45 plus the standard postage. When you go to the certificate of mailing, which is the Form 3817 that's referenced in the ordinance, you are allowed, as it states right there under the Rhode Island general laws now, to utilize that for the zone changes. And it certifies, what it does is it certifies that each piece of mail has been hand-delivered to the post office by the applicant, and that it will be provided to the postal carrier for delivery to the individual homes. It requires no recipient signature. The postal carrier puts it in the mailbox with all the rest of the mail. So nothing goes back to the post office. There's never a time when someone isn't there and to sign for it because it's not needed. And the cost is only $1.40 plus postage. It's less than half. Come on now. Oh, excuse me. So I want you to see what the forms look like. The one at the bottom of this page is the standard certified mail. You've probably all seen it. You've probably received one or two in the course of time. That's the one where you have to sign for it, and you sign right here. The one above is the certificate of mailing. It's a very simple form. I know you can't read the lettering on it, but the top half of it just says from, and the person sending it puts their name and address there. And the bottom half of it says to, and that's the addressee. One of those goes with each piece of mail to the post office. The person working at the post office receives each one and stamps it right here, stating that it was received, and gives the little white form back to the person mailing it. So that person comes back with all the little forms in hand. At that point, the mail is handed off to the postal employee and then sent out in the next day's mail. So the important things to keep, the important lessons here is that we now have a new format to certify mail. It is less expensive, it's more dependable, and it will get out to every single person who is deemed to be a recipient of mail for these public hearings that are coming up, either before you for a zone change or before the zoning board for variances. And just to kind of have a little effect here, this box here is all the returns that I got from the mailings last fall for the historic district public hearings. These are people who either didn't choose to sign or didn't go down to the post office to pick them up.
Can I ask you a couple questions?
Yes.
First question is, do you have a total dollar amount that you've spent Just I'm curious, in like a year's worth of zoning changes or variances in terms of certified mail, I'm just curious.
Well, we don't spend a real lot of money because applicants, zoning board applicants and zoning
Okay, so it's
change
not a taxpayer expense primarily, is it? Or is it?
Well, it is.
It was last year because of the historic district ordinance, because we, the town, sponsored it, and it did cost us several $1,000s, on the order of, I think, $4,500 for all the mailing.
And
That
then-
would have been cut to less than half.
And then just from a process standpoint, because roughly 2/3 of our properties are either rental properties or summer homes, there's a third of the people that live here full-time. So those mailings that you just showed us, are they going to the properties where the owners don't live?
They go to the person's address where the tax bill is sent.
Oh, so if they lived in Boston, they would get
It would
them?
go to Boston.
Okay, all right.
Any other questions?
Yeah, Mike, how are you going to communicate the change? It's a little bit different, so how is the public going to know?
Well, we'll be working with with town clerk so that she will notify individuals when they come in requesting zone change applications. And she'll be identifying the new form to be used. We've already been discussing it with the Wakefield Post Office and the Narragansett Post Office.
Maybe you just put it on the web too, if it's an important, change. We just want people to know what's going on and communicate that on the Facebook page.
Well, certainly we could. The other way is with zoning variances and special use permits. Those people all come through my office. They have to.
Right.
So we will educate them one at a time. General notification on the website could certainly help.
So some small business owner that wants to open up a business in town, their mailing costs have just dropped by more than half.
About 60%.
And we're cutting bureaucracy. I'm on board.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that the people that potentially can be affected by a zoning change or a variance are completely notified as normal or better notified. I know you've been operating kind of beyond the state ordinance, but that just for, to save us a couple dollars I just want to make sure the abutters understand completely. They might not be responsive, but I want to make sure that we are acting completely on the behalf of the abutters.
Well, I think this is an improvement,
Okay.
quite
All right.
honestly.
If you think it's an
because-
improvement, that's fine. That's great.
Because
Yeah, no, I see.
all of these would have landed in the mailboxes had this been
Right.
certificate of mailing. They
So-
didn't. People were not home, and so the postal carrier had to bring them back.
How many boxes like that did you mail up?
Probably 6 or 7.
6 or 7, okay.
8 maybe.
So, Mike, I know one of the reasons why people want certified mail is you can prove that it was accepted, a signature is there. So will this put the town in any type of jeopardy for anything that we do, not having the ability, because I know we've done it before, having Ann take a look back and finding out that someone did indeed receive something when they're saying they didn't?
Well, we weighed that. The idea of having someone actually sign for it is a very powerful component of the process in case that individual said they weren't notified, and yet we might have the signature card in the file. The upside of getting all these other mailings to individuals, I feel, offsets the downside. The Postal Service is a very reliable postal service here in Rhode Island. I think we can feel very comfortable, particularly in Narragansett. We don't have any rural federal delivery or any, difficult addresses to chase down. It's pretty standard in this town. And so we feel as though this will ensure that the mail gets into the mailbox. Does every single person read their mail? We don't know that. And does every single person collect their mail? We don't know that either. So I can't give you the 100% guarantee this is the perfect best way to do it, but I think it's way better than having several hundred returns come back to us of pieces of mail that easily could have been gotten to the hands of the taxpayer and the resident who might be significantly interested in a case and yet not aware of it until after it's happened.
Any other questions from the council?
How long does the post office hang on to that registered mail, waiting for the recipient to come pick it up? The 30
It came
days.
back, because we did 3 different public hearings, as you recall.
Yep.
2 in October, 1 in November. They came back in dribs and drabs, so I can't tell you exactly, but it would probably be
I think it's 30 days.
no more than a week.
A week, okay.
Yeah, it wouldn't be too much longer than that.
All right, at least. I'm good. Sounds
Thanks,
like a plan.
Mike.
Efficient.
We'll take comment from the public. And do you need us sort of to approve this tonight?
We would ask that you close the hearing tonight and consider approval of it so that I can bring you the first reading in 2 weeks and the adoption in 4 weeks.
Okay, thank you. Karen?
Karen Shepshelowitz, 63 Wanda Street, Narragansett.
Hello,
I
Karen.
would-
Excuse me. Can you raise your right hand?
Oh, yeah,
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
I was just wondering if it was possible, when they list these things, if there's a way to explain to the general public who's not familiar with these, a lot of times when you read it in the paper or something, they just have the number of the regulation, and I have no idea what they're talking about. And I think it would be helpful to just have a small blurb explaining, like, this might be a variance in height, in parking places, or close to the water marsh, or something like that. Wanda Street's a very small street, it's 1 block, but there were some heavy variations that were put into condominiums at the bottom of the street. And naturally, everyone on the street did not get notified. And my fear is it starts a precedent. You know, like if you're allowed to have these variances, the next time that subject comes up, there's already been a precedent setting. And I just wonder, like Susan, you mentioned putting things on Facebook page. Like, if they could just have a small blurb for those of us that aren't engineers, and so we don't have to research all this stuff, just to explain what it is, like light or, you know, closeness to the next building. I would really appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Anybody else wishing to speak?
Susan, I did do a little blurb on our town website,
Thank you, clerk.
besides
Excellent.
the ad in the newspaper 3 times.
Job well done. Thank you. Hi.
Hi, Russ Stasta, 15 Fifth Avenue.
Russ, can you just speak into it a little bit?
Sure,
Russ, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
This is a significant part of the legal process. If you receive the mail and you do not sign, or you do not say you received it, then it's part of the legal process that says that you were notified and you didn't do anything about it. By changing this means that it gets sent out. If it gets sent out to the wrong address by any chance, it is now the town's responsibility that they didn't get the response. It's a significant part of the legal process. It shouldn't be changed. It is the way it's always been done, and it is legal. I would say that the new process that he proposes is not legal, and I would suggest that maybe the solicitor should look at that.
So, Mark, you already looked into it, correct?
State law.
It is allowed by law.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak? Seeing nobody, all those in favor?
Aye.
You want to close the hearing?
Oh, a motion to close.
Move that motion?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Do I have a motion to approve the new mailing?
I'll move that motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Yeah, I want to talk about it. It is a legal process. I don't think, we have so much discussion in the town around zone changes, zoning, the laxness of when dimensional variances come up or special use permits come up. People have a lot of concern about that. It's something that's been a theme, actually, in the past few years in terms of people's concerns in the town. I don't think we should water down the notification requirements. The signature is the proof that the person received it. If they don't care enough to sign for their certified mail, they don't care enough to do it. But there's a lot of people that do sign, and then they have the notification of what's going on in their neighborhood. So I strongly am strongly in favor of keeping it the way that it is for those reasons.
That was a question I asked that Mike as well, because that also concerned me, and especially to the point that, Mike, you brought up the expenditure for the town for this past year is because of the historic district. So the majority of the zoning is paid by the people for the applicants. So it's not a cost savings for the town, and it concerns me that we don't have the documentation.
Well,
I mean, I just had like 3 thoughts go through my head. So, Mark, the solicitor. So, on the point of, if I'm in a butter and I get a certified mail and I sign it, that means I've acknowledged that I've read it, and I've acknowledged that this variance or this activity is going on. If I choose to ignore it, and then there's no, I mean, so the project can't be stalled by ignoring it, can it?
It's an interesting quandary. If you sign for it, you acknowledge you received it, not necessarily that you read it and agree with it or acknowledge it. If you don't sign for it, I'm trying to think, because I receive a lot of these myself. Could you argue you didn't receive, somebody comes to the door and no one's home, could you argue you never received the notification that it's sitting at the post office? I guess one could argue that. Unless somebody signs for it, there's no foolproof way of establishing that the thing was delivered.
I mean, the act of acknowledging that your neighbor is doing something that needs to be modified via law or an ordinance, the act of acknowledging that is just that, you're acknowledging it. And if you want to come to public hearings and speak against it, you can. And if there's some major crisis where the abutters, plural, want to sue the project to stop or come to the town to get it to stop, my question, though, remains, if somebody is affected by a variance and they ignore the mailing, the project goes on, unless there's some other crisis.
It goes on.
Correct?
Yeah.
So I think it's great that the town has been acting above the state law. I'm not a huge fan of, rushing to the bottom of what the minimum is. The cost is the cost. So I get the certified mailing. I sometimes believe it's more of an impact that we have 2/3 of our properties that are not occupied by full-time residents. So, I mean, to me, it's a notification system. I actually would think that there were better ways including the mailing, that you could do it via a bunch of different ways as well, if you really wanted to be active about it, and, public notices, email. I mean, again, I don't think not acknowledging a mailing is going to stop something from happening. So, I don't know. I wasn't really making a point. I just wanted to make sure it was clear to me, so I had to say it out loud.
Well, I support this because, we're cutting costs for somebody who wants to expand or work on their house or bring in a business. And at the same time, we're increasing exposure for a certain project because in testimony, 1/6 of them aren't getting out. 2/3 of us live out of state or out of town. So 2/3 of the people at any given time are not going to the post office and picking up the letter, correct? Okay, so this is providing more exposure, more transparency of what's going on in the neighborhood. And it's cheaper. So
Yeah,
I'm on board with this one.
We do want to make sure people know what's happening. Now, the green cards that you get at your door when you come home and there's a card, that makes you go to the post office?
That's the sheriff.
Yeah,
The
no,
sheriff.
well, or if you have something at the post
The orange
office.
one.
Yeah, whatever color it is.
The black one.
The black one, That seems to be just a little bit better, that when you come home, you know somebody has something important for you. Is that any part of this or not?
Well, yeah, as I mentioned early on, if the postal carrier does not find anyone home, he puts a card or she puts a card in the mailbox.
Right.
It's 3 by 5, I think
Yeah.
it's blue. And it just says something along the line of, you have certified mail waiting for you at the post office. Some people think those are bills or other bad news.
They don't go.
And they won't go.
Well, they never receive them because they got the house rented, or they're only there 2 months out of the summer.
Well, the biggest excuse me, Mike. So the biggest thing is when you get certified, you don't get the letter, you get the receipt.
Right.
When you get a letter that's on this list of certificate or the mailing, the letter stays in your mailbox.
That's right.
So that's the biggest difference. So the letter stays there versus you get a green card.
Right. But
And going to get, you have to go get the, so I get the idea, certified mailing, people freak out, they have to go get it, something very important versus something that's in your mailbox. So I just wanted to make sure that was clear.
I believe the General Assembly passed this law as a reflection or an understanding of the two-income households of what our generation has become, and how few households have people at home old enough to sign for a certified mail, and that by and large, the greater good is served by getting the mail into the mailboxes where people can pick it up and decide if they want to open it in the kitchen, and if they don't like it, they can throw it in the wastebasket, but if they've at least got it. When we have a couple hundred sitting here
real time
that didn't get delivered, we feel bad about that. And we do hear the criticism, and we do get people coming to hearings periodically saying they didn't know anything about it.
We also got the library. That's going to be a big expense. We can one vote, we can cut that bill in half, the mailing bill for the library.
I think there's some, I don't know if everybody's really clear on exactly the difference between certified mail and, I mean, it might be good for people to actually go and look, go to the post office, figure out exactly what it is, because I know that I've sent, as you know, when I've represented people in front of zoning boards, I've had to send them out. And so I know the process, and I know that you have the evidence in the stack that you have there that people didn't pick up. They all still got their green card in the mail. So they got the green card that says you have a certified thing to pick up. Everybody gets that.
They got the card in the mailbox.
Right, they got the card in the mailbox. So, and I think that's the chain of evidence for a person who's an applicant and can say, I've notified everybody about this, and I've got this list of signatures, and these are the people who didn't pick it up. It's very simple for people to understand, and I just think if people on this board, or maybe we take a little time to think about it, make sure we understand, because the difference between certified mailing versus what I call the green card versus just sending it in the postal service saying that it got sent.
It's not time sensitive.
It's not time sensitive.
I mean, I kind of agree.
So I just have a question about, so I understand the point that Matt was making. I just have a question, and I'm more curious than anything else. So everything, the three boards in town, right, council, planning, and zoning, why is this, I know it's a public hearing, but why are we deciding on this process change versus the zoning board?
Because it's an ordinance.
Oh, because it's an ordinance, okay, all right. I didn't know if it was a process change or an
Bring
ordinance
up a
change.
good question, though. Are the zoning and planning board on board with this change?
Yes, the planning board.
There we go. They're the
I can say
experts.
that I reviewed it with the planning board. I have not reviewed it with the zoning board.
Yes, so
But the planning board reviewed each of these chapters separately and gave the same recommendation for approval.
So we
Madam
basically-
President, may I add one thing to this?
Yes.
So the director, Mr. DeLuca, approached me prior to bringing this before the council. So I had several questions for him. Is it legal? The answer was yes. What is the difference between certified mail and certified mailing? So one is certifying an individual letter, the certified mail with the green card that we talk about, and the other one is certified mailing, where the post office is certifying that these letters are going to these addresses. So the third question I had for Mr. DeLuca was, how could we put the people in this town, how could they get, the most people get this information that we're trying to disseminate to them with this letter? And the answer was by certifying the mailing, because Councilman Murray brought up a very good point. 2/3 of the houses in this town, they're really not residents. They live elsewhere or they're rentals or whatever. So this town has a kind of a different dynamic. So if the goal was in helping you make this decision to get as many letters to as many people who this decision will impact them, the certified mailing is the one that will get the most letters to them. Just want to add that.
But just to
That's
clarify,
helpful.
we send to the tax bill at the address, right? So they don't need to live here. They'll be sent this to the address that their tax bill goes to.
That's correct, but most of these people have a forwarding address. So if we do a certified mailing and it does not, the letter will not stop at that address if they're not there. It will go to the forwarded address, whatever they designate. Whereas the certified mail will stop there.
So the certified mail does not pick up the address of the tax bill?
Well, the certified mail with the green card will leave a note there for them to pick up this letter, but they won't get it because they're not there. That's the way I understood it when I went to the post office.
I think we need to clarify that, because I can't see how that can be if that's not the mailing address that they have on their tax bill. I mean, that's what we should be using, right, the tax bill mailing address?
Yeah, they
I
are.
believe
We
what,
are. So if we are, then how's that happening?
So some people don't pick it up. As they said, some people think it's a collections notice. Some people, their neighbors tell them, there's a mailing coming from the town of Narragansett about a zone change coming up. Here's my letter, see it? And they're like, well, I'm not going to go to the post office and pick mine up. I mean, that's sometimes what people do. Many attorneys also send regular mail and certified mail because, in fact, I do that often, because the person may not pick up the certified, but they're still getting, you can say I sent it regular and I sent it, now not all attorneys do that or applicants, but Mark, you know that many attorneys do that. They will send the regular mail and the certified. So again, that's not required. It is a watering down of the notification requirement. So it's a policy decision of the council. Do we want to have the more lenient approach that Patrick's advocating, or do we want to keep the stricter approach with the certified mail, the green card?
Do we have a motion to table? I mean, you haven't brought it to either board, right?
I say we
No,
just
planning
move it
looked
on.
at it.
Planning, but zoning hasn't looked at it. Yeah, I mean, what's the will of the council?
I say we vote on it up and down and move forward. Why
You
mess
guys ready to
around? Let's
vote
save
on
some
it?
people some money and get some efficiency here.
Does anyone need more information?
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
No.
Aye.
All those who
Oh,
are
I'm sorry.
opposed?
I'm sorry.
No.
3-2, motion passes.
Thank you.
Okay, and we're going to keep an eye on that certified mail. I
can always
think it's
flip-
going to
we can
hit a
always flip-
lot of people, but I just
We
want to
can
make sure.
always flip it back.
All right. Moving on, we're back to the roosters. We had a discussion on motion 12. We were talking about quality of life issues and where people stood on restricting roosters.
Sanctity of the
Yep.
barnyard.
Can we, can you
The public
explain the
hearing's
one?
closed.
Are we back to the roosters?
Back to the
Right.
rooster.
I'm closing the public hearing.
Certified, certified
All in favor
roosters.
of closing it? Aye.
Can-
You were back to the roosters.
Did we close the public hearing?
Yeah, I just did.
Can you, I don't want like a lesson on farm animals.
Yep.
But can you talk, so if there's one, they don't make all the noise?
Well, yeah, you always have one rooster. If you have two roosters.
Yeah, I know, they fight and they
yeah,
get
they
crazy.
squawk, But the rooster, all right, I don't know, we're going back to second grade here, but.
I don't remember much about second grade, so.
Roosters, you know, it's true, you don't need a rooster to
don't
produce
need a
eggs.
rooster.
You need them to fertilize the egg to make little chicks. Back to second grade. But the rooster also finds food, even though they're fed. He will alert the hens on where the food is. He protects the hens if a wild animal gets in. A good rooster will fight that wild animal to protect the stock. He rounds them up, sends them into the coop at night, and gets them going in the morning. I mean, this is basic farming. I'm no expert, but to me, if we restrict to one rooster per flock or coop or whatever the proper term is, I can sign up with that.
Okay, heard a modification on the motion. Anybody else in favor of restricting the residential zones? Mike, he wants to modify it to one.
I'd go to one rooster and support
Okay,
that.
so we have, can you amend the motion to have one rooster in the residential zone? And then next time I'm going to try for another. Can you make a
I'd like
motion?
to, I'd like to make a motion.
Second.
Okay.
To amend it
To amend it to one rooster.
Rooster in a residential zone. I have a second. All those in favor? Oh,
Aye.
Richard wants to say something.
Not only affects the one person, it could, I would imagine, affect the South County Museum greatly, because it has taken great pride in their Rhode Island red roosters and hens. So I am sure they have quite a few roosters there.
Well, I think they get
special. That's not a
That
residential.
certainly is.
Yeah, that's not a
would
residential
affect
zone.
them. Why not? Why would, they have neighbors.
Because they're more of a farm setting. I think that's zoned like a commercial, not commercial.
Is that an
but
agricultural spot?
Open farm.
Mark, I was looking to you, because is that a different zone, do we know?
I don't know. I'm pretty confident it's not zoned residential.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah, just be like R10,
There
R20.
certainly are houses nearby, the South
Right.
County Museum. They could,
Right.
just as close as that lady is to the chickens that are disturbing her. So I think we'd want to make sure that this does not apply to the South County Museum.
Yeah, I mean, the motion is for residential zones.
Right.
I think you're making a mistake. I think that clearly the South County Museum is close enough to houses for this to be an issue. And I think it should be stated that the exception would be the South County Museum, and not get into this situation where one or two neighbors
Mike,
get
can you,
so upset.
can you see if it's a residential?
Conatra Farms, is that a residential area?
I can't bring it up on the screen, but
Okay.
I can tell you that it's zoned R80. R80 is residential, 2-acre.
2-acre, okay.
Limitation, so it's a low-density residential there.
Okay, so that particular ordinance was above R80, wasn't it?
So you could change your ordinance to a certain residential, either R10, R80, or just R,
In the
correct?
R10, R20 zone?
Right. So you can,
We could modify one rooster to.
R10,
10.
R20 zone.
Right, one rooster to an
One
R10
rooster.
zone.
R10, R20 zone,
Let's, R10, right?
yeah, or R20, both zones.
You do.
One's a
okay.
quarter acre, one's a
One's
half acre. Yeah.
Okay. Any other comments about the restrictions of roosters? Okay, you have a modification, Mr. Murray?
I'd like to move that. You wanna
I'll second that, yeah.
Second that.
Can you say the modification? It's
I'd like to
One-
restrict, I'd like to amend
Modify.
current or motion to one rooster in a R10, R20 zone only.
okay. Do you second that?
I'll second that, yeah.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
No.
3-2, motion passes. Thank you. Number 14, a motion to approve the final balancing change order with Martone Service Company, Inc. for the Town Hall roof replacement project in the deduct amount of $10,200.
So moved.
So moved. Second.
Discussion? Anybody from the public? All those in favor? 5-0, motion passes. Number 15, motion to award the bid to the Architecture Engineering Services Belmont Market Pierre Liquors Building and Building Systems evaluation to the lowest bidder, Punt Bennett Architects LTD, in the amount of $10,000.
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Oh,
Nope, no question.
come on up, Stanley.
Maybe get,
Always welcome to come up.
I want to get Jeff to explain what's going on.
Stan Wachowski, Narragansett. I thought we were still in a negotiation and that the contract wasn't yet finalized for this. I thought there was a 60-day,
Yeah, we have an executed contract with a 60-day inspection period and one 30-day extension if needed. So we're doing the inspection, and
Is that
part of the
30
inspection
day?
is hiring an engineer to check the building out. Maybe Jeff can expand on that.
so this is just the inspection. This is-
Inspection process, correct.
Okay. All right, because I didn't know if the contract was finalized.
I don't know
Without a
exactly what
finalized
date.
contract, I don't want to go and start spending money.
No, we
You
have
know?
an executed contract. It was executed on what date?
I don't have the exact date that Gilbane executed, but we executed it last week.
Right.
And Stanley, I think what you're getting at is there's, we're negotiating that, the shared easement and expense agreement. And the time period to negotiate that and come to an agreement is identical to the inspection period. So we have 60 days with the 30-day extension to negotiate that. At the same time, the inspections are running. So if we can't reach agreement on that, or the inspections turn up something that we don't like, both of those avenues give us the ability to walk away from the deal.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
All those opposed?
I'm going to say no, just because I still want to see that the common fees be defined before we go forward with this. I
So-
wanted to go forward, but I just have to make sure that it's in the best interest of the town.
So, are you a no?
No.
So 3-2, motion passes. Last motion, motion 16, a motion to award the bid for the rental of tables, chairs, and tents for the Kinney Bungalow, North Beach Clubhouse, and the towers to the lowest bidder, AE Vent Rentals, Inc., at their quoted prices for a 2-year period ending April 11, 2020. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Do I have any discussion? Any discussion from the public? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
5-0, motion passes. Good night.
Motion to adjourn. Motion.
Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I got a lot
Second.
of bosses up here tonight.
All in favor? Aye.
Yeah.
Smoke them if you got them.
Yeah. Good night.
We gotta be 21.